Okay, so there's 3 more that I'd like to do with y'all before we do these very last 2 solving problems. Number 7 is the negative square root of 72a to the 8th, c to the 12th. Okay, so I think about 72, and the first factors that might come to mind are 8 and 9. But if I think more about perfect square factors, I think about this 36 and 2 being factors of 72. A to the 8th is a perfect square, and so is c to the 12th because they're both even. Okay, so now I'm going to take my square roots, and I end up with the square root of 36 is 6, so it's this negative 6. I'm keeping the 2. It's not a perfect square. The square root of 8. A to the 8th is a to the 4th, that's even. The square root of c to the 12th is c to the 6th, that's even, so I don't have to worry about absolute values on those variables. What I'm left with under the radical is the square root of 2. So my answer is negative 6, a to the 4th, c to the 6th times the square root of 2. All right, number 8 is the square root of 80, a squared, b squared. Okay, so I'm trying to think of factors of 80. I think of 4 and 20, but I know that there's bigger factors, and bigger factors 16. So I end up with 16 times 5 times a squared, b squared. Both of those are perfect squares. I'm ready to take the square root of 16, that's 4. 5 is not a perfect square factor. A squared is a, b squared is b, and I'm left with times the square root of 5. Okay, and the last one that I want to do with you is the square root, and it's a fraction of 363 x to the 5th y divided by 3xy cubed. So again, if possible, you always want to try to simplify that fraction inside if you can. And I know 3 goes into 363. If I add the digits, 3 plus 6 is 9 plus 3 is 12, and 3 does go into 12. So actually 3 goes into 3 once, into 6 twice, and into 3 once. I look at my x's. Do I have more in the numerator or the denominator? I have more in the numerator. How many more? 4. How about my y's? More in the numerator or the denominator? Definitely the denominator. I have 2. Remember, this is still under the radical. 121 is a perfect square. It's 11. X to the 4th is a perfect square. It's x squared. And y squared is a perfect square. It is y. And that, of course, is an odd exponent. So it would be 11x squared divided by the absolute value of y. Okay, hopefully those examples have helped you, but please feel free to reach out to me if you need to. So it looks like on this very last page, we just have 2 problems and we're solving. Number 1 says 45r squared minus 500 equals 0. Okay, so we're solving. When we solve for the variable. I see that on the left I have r squared. So I need to get r squared by itself. How do I do that? Well, the first thing I need to do is move the 500 by adding it. I'm going to add 500 to both sides and get 45 r squared equals 500. To get r by itself, I'm going to divide by what's in front of it. So undo the multiplication. And when I do that, I get r squared equals, I don't believe 45 goes in there, but I know they are both divisible by 5. So if I divide 500 by 5, I get 100. If I divide 45 by 5, I get 9. Now, how do I undo something squared? To undo something squared, you are going to take the square root. To undo something cubed, you would take the cube root of it. To undo something to the 4th power, you would take the 4th root of it. We are only working on square roots. Next year in Algebra 2, you'll work on cube roots, 4th roots, 5th roots, so on. So that'll help you. So to take the square root, I put a square root around the r squared, and I put a square root around the 100 divided by 9. And I want this to be positive or negative since we're talking about square roots. So when I take the square root of something squared, it takes the square root off of it, and I have just r, exactly what I want. 100 is a perfect square, it's 10. 9 is a perfect square, it's 3. So I have r equals positive or negative 10/3. Okay, let's try the next one. 12t squared equals 75. To get t by itself, I'm going to divide by 12. T squared equals 75 over 12. They're both divisible by 3. So I get t squared equals 25 over 4. But I don't want t squared. I want just t. To undo something squared, I take the square root. When I take the square root, it becomes plus or minus. When I take the square root of something squared, it just becomes t. It's half of what it is. And then when I take the square root of 25, I get 5, and the square root of 4 is 2. So I get t can equal positive or negative 5/2. Okay, this was a lot with radicals. We went through 3 sections today. Please, I really do want you to reach out to me if there's any questions you have on this. And if you feel good about it, feel free to go ahead and start your homework assignment when you finish this. Have a great rest of your day.